Well, you can't win them all. Here's the thing with this one. There's a very simple analysis to put with this game. Washington played well. Carolina did not. Washington got the result they deserved, and so did Carolina. I understand that they were playing 3 games in 4 nights, and then you are in your own building, have to fly up somewhere the next day, fly back, and then play again in your own building against a rested team in the same division. So a game you typically don't expect to win, but nothing is given to you in this league. Carolina's always got one of the more difficult schedules in the league, thanks to the State Fair road trip and how everything lines up. The schedule this season is a little bit more difficult than normal, considering how condensed it is because of the Olympics this year and everything like that. This was just one of those nights where they just didn't have it. Even if they were well rested, even if they were, completely healthy and had everyone in the lineup, Slavin wouldn't have won you this game tonight if you did have him. I say that as quite the Jacob Slavin fan. There we go. As you can tell. I had to have this jacket, and my girlfriend bought it for me. I've probably said that on here before. Canes were just not good tonight. I don't want to say Carolina fell apart in this game because they never put it together to begin with. Because hold on one second. There we go. I have to get my F-16 back in the frame because that's my favorite one. There we go. But I noticed it early on, and I wrote a post about it where I said that, Carolina's a faster team than Washington. Speed's important, but it's not everything. And a lot of the first neutral zone transitions that Washington made really set the tone. And they were entering the zone with an extra guy almost every time. It was either a 3-on-2, a 4-on-2, 4-on-3. Either way, Washington was coming into the offensive zone with numbers because they were controlling the puck on transition really, really well. And they were controlling their entries really well. And they weren't letting anybody get ahead of anybody else. Carolina couldn't make a good entry tonight to save their life because it was constantly one guy going against 3, 2 guys going against 3. They never really went in the zone with numbers. They couldn't get pucks in behind the defense. This was one of those nights where Carolina might have been better served to simplify their game and do the dump and chase thing, which, of course, that should be secondary. But this was one of those nights where it might have been easier for them to just dump the puck in and go and try and retrieve it with numbers a little bit more often. There were a lot of times where they were just trying to be a little bit too fancy. But yeah, credit to Washington. They played a good game. You're going to have low points, and, this is nothing to hit the panic button about in the grand scheme of things. The lack of the power play working is kind of starting to become a problem. It just seems like it gets back to the point where it's kind of mediocre, and then it just up and dies and goes back to being garbage. So rough game. You're going to have them sometimes. Nothing to panic about. Nothing to be happy about either. But, they were due for a bad game. Carolina has been battling all kind of adversity, and they still managed to be 11-6 right now. So not anything to panic about, but definitely was not happy with how they played tonight because there's been plenty of other times where they had 3 games in 4 nights, and you could still see the fight in them in the third game. And tonight, that was just not that. They didn't have it tonight. Just straight up, they did not have it tonight. And there's going to be games like that, but this one was one of those. Evan Smith, what's up, dude? We played like shit. Yeah, they were awful. Will Park says, lazy, sloppy, nonchalant play. Cap's been waiting for this game since Saturday. I could smell this L coming from a mile away. Yeah. Dealey, what's up, dude? Probably the worst game Aho has ever played. Can't be mad, though. This is definitely the worst one he had since the one in Toronto last year, because the one in Toronto last year was definitely probably the worst one I think I've ever seen him play. Everyone was bad tonight. Like, you had a few good shifts here and there. Ehlers, Stankov, and Blake line was not terrible. And I'm not just saying that because they scored. They were the only ones that seemed like that they were playing their game and playing to their strengths. Svechnikov was not bad, but he was not great. Aho and Jarvis were awful. The bottom 6 was not up to its normal standards. The defense was mediocre at best. And Freddie was not the problem tonight, but he was not great either. But the team in front of him wasn't doing him any favors. So a few timely saves by him is the only reason that this wasn't a much worse result, and why Carolina could even try to maybe salvage it in the last couple of minutes when they pulled the goalie. The power play is just bad. It's just as now, as far as Anderson goes, I don't know what's going on with him, if he's actually injured or anything like that. To me, it appeared that they just kind of the concussion spotter probably maybe pulled them out. But it's also like if it was done on a precautionary basis, Carolina wasn't going to win that game anyway. I knew that about 30 seconds into that game that they weren't going to win. And you just put Kochetkov out there instead and, just let it be a precautionary thing. Not a bad move at all if that's all it was. But they just didn't have it tonight. Daniel, what's up, dude? We've had a heavy schedule and we were due for a loss after winning 4, but I would not have wanted to lose the Caps for sure. I'll take losing this one tonight because they didn't lose on Sunday. They can lose this one and 2 more in exchange for winning on Sunday night, because after what they did to Rod in Toronto, like I didn't care if they lost the next 3 as long as they won that one. And you guys know how much I dislike the Caps because I used to live there. So I've got got a little bit of a rivalry going on there, but it's just Washington played a good game tonight. When the short amount of times that Carolina could sustain some offensive zone pressure, they couldn't do anything with it because Washington was keeping them on the perimeter. And that's the other thing about it. It's man-on-man defense for both teams. They both play that style. And Washington did that a little bit better tonight in terms of the shot suppression. And, you don't always need speed when you have a bigger, heavier team like Washington is. So now would you get this result if you played that game over and over again in a 7-game series as we saw last season, which ultimately ended in 5? Probably not. But definitely tonight, Carolina they just got outplayed. There's not much else to say about it, really. Daniel also asked, do you think Freddie will be out or think the spotter pulled him out of precaution? It was near the end of the game. Yeah. I think that was precautionary, and I think that maybe the spotter got him. But either way, I think that they would have brought him out because the way Carolina was playing, that was not a game where you, 1, really had to win because it's early in the season, and 2, circumstances considered, the risk is not worth the reward of leaving him in. So I don't know if it was the concussion spot or I don't know if that was a coaching decision, but whatever it was, I think it was the right decision. It was the right circumstance to bring him out and not risk him getting injured like that. That was a good idea. Evan says, Stanky got that dog in him though. Dude, I was very happy with how he played tonight. It's just, it's weird to me though. It's like out of all the guys that were on the ice when that occurred, I know that, you don't have exactly a plethora of fighters out there, but like the second smallest guy in franchise history, because I'm 99% sure without looking that Nathan Gerbe is the only person that's played for the Hurricanes that's been smaller than Logan Stankoven. And, Gerbe was dog too. He's in that situation where Walker goes over there and initiates something, and then Stankoven's the one who eventually ends up dropping the gloves when whoever it was went after Blake. And I'm just kind of like, well, why is this happening like this? I know that, a lot of people were saying, oh, the guys who normally fight, which there's not really many on Carolina, and, that's kind of a dying concept anyway, were on the bench. But that's one of those times where it's like, even if you're not someone who normally fights, you kind of got to pony up. And now here's the other thing about that whole situation. I don't think Freddie should have got a penalty. Additionally, I don't think that Duhaime or whoever, or Dowd or whoever it was, because I was doing homework while I was watching the game. I don't think either one of those things should have really been penalties. I understand you have to have a response for a situation like that because you got to protect your goalies because there's only 2 of them. And I understand that Tripp was saying on the broadcast, like, you can't play a goalie the same way you play a defenseman in that situation. And, he's right. But Tripp also, he's a goalie, so he's a little bit biased towards them. But, like, that didn't look like any type of malicious, like, trying to injure him type of thing. I understand you have to have a response to it. But if you're going to have a response to it, go all out with it. Don't just go over there and get in the guy's face and give him a whack and, act like, if you're going to make something out of that, actually do something and send a message. And, that's something that should have happened immediately. That shouldn't have waited until Stankoven dropped his gloves. So, and, he held his own for being someone who never fought before, but because he was saying, Corey Lavalette posted something about saying that Stankoven said he'd never been in a fight in his whole life. So good job. Like, you can find that element if you need it. Every single human being has the violence gene in them. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. So there comes a time and a place where you got to use it. And that was one of those times where it got used. Will says the only bright spot of this game was Stank's line and Stank himself taking up Frizzell. Walker should have already had the gloves off. Yeah, see, like when I see something like that, I don't know if you guys remember it, but there was one time Carolina was in Dallas, and this is about 9-10 years ago, maybe longer now. And Antoine Roussel ran Anton Hudobin straight the fuck over. No attempt to stop whatsoever. Way more egregious situation than this one. Ron Hainsey skated over to him and threw his gloves off, and he punched him, and he landed the first punch on him before his gloves hit the ice. And he fucked him up. Like, that's the type of response. Like, if you're going to do something, that's the type of response that you got to have there. So 11-5. My bad. Okay. Lightning NC says a lot of really lazy, slow, sloppy, no-look passes from most of the roster. Caps block shots really well, and the Canes did nothing to adjust when, where they were shooting. Yeah, absolutely. Once Carolina did gain the offensive zone, Washington kept them on the perimeter, and they didn't let anything through the middle of the ice. So Carolina was just passing it to, they were playing pong with each other, but they couldn't get inside the circles the entire time. So it's like, no, it's just Washington just played well. Agree. Better safe with it. Yeah, better safe than sorry when it comes to Anderson. You're right. I felt the same in that the Caps were better and the Canes weren't. Yeah, no, this just Washington played a good game. They really did. Like, it seemed like our normal man-to-man D was changed slightly this season to be less strict, or am I just seeing things? The defense doesn't look very different to me. It seems like how they're operating in transition and in the offensive zone is a little bit more efficiently. It wasn't tonight, but speaking in terms of the season as a whole, it seems like they're operating a little bit more freely in that regard. The breakouts have been a little bit faster, a little bit more controlled. The transition game has seemed to be a little bit more offensively focused. The defensive side of things don't look a whole lot different to me. Maybe they are. I mean, that could be a totally valid observation. It doesn't seem much different to me personally, no. Skylark, what's up, bud? I'm about ready to press the panic button over our power play. It costs us a series, maybe even a cup if not a draw. You're not wrong, dude. You're not wrong at all. The power play has been a problem for on and off for years. But you're at that point where, okay, so if you want to have a team that is Stanley Cup capable, you don't need one functioning power play unit, or you don't need one elite power play unit that goes out there and, can score at 25%. You need two. You need a lethal second power play unit that can pick up the slack when the first one doesn't. That's the whole point of having depth on the team to begin with in a situation like that. Carolina, it's not there right now. I'm at the point, and I posted something about this a few minutes before I started streaming, where you may remember, I believe the Canes were in Ottawa when this happened. And it was Rod's first year coaching. And the power play was worse then than it is now. Now, granted, you've got a deeper team, and going back to Lightning's point, you've got a deeper team now, and that may be why the team is operating a little bit differently on the offensive side of the puck. That aside, there was one time back in the 18-19 season, I think they were in Ottawa, and the Canes power play was just awful. And it got to the point where I think they were on their fifth one that night, and Rod sent Clark Bishop, Brock McGinn, and somebody else. He sent the normal fourth line out there. Guys who aren't normally on the power play. He sent them out because at that point, you might as well try something different. I think he needs to consider really sending a message to the room and maybe having a shift where he sends Stahl, Martinook, Carrier, Chatfield, and Miller out for a power play, something like that. Like, I know Chatty's out right now, but like something along those lines might be something that's needed at this point, because it's getting to the point where it needs to be done. Yeah. Because there's only two of them. Ahem. I just hate the Caps so much. Yeah, I do too, but like they played well tonight. I mean, that's the first time they beat the Canes in regulation in I don't know how long, other than game 2 of the playoffs last year. I can't remember when the last time they did one in regulation, whether it was in Raleigh or in DC. Because I know that I was at both games in DC last season, and they won both of those in shootouts, I believe, if I remember correctly. Caps fans are excited they won the cup tonight, it seems, if you look at media. Oh, I imagine. Daniel says someone on Reddit said maybe Stahl should replace Aho on PP1 to win the faceoffs. I have to say I agree. He could be a big body to screen the goalie and for tap ins and deflections. Yeah, so Jordo actually used to do that a lot. He was on the power play to win the faceoff, and then he would go to the front of the net, be the bumper guy, all that type of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's a permanent solution, but just to kind of maybe revitalize the power play and get it going again, you might need to consider something like that because, yeah, there's an execution factor. Yeah, there's a planning factor, all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, the guys on the ice are the ones who have to get it done. And there's only so much Rod can do to get them to do what they're supposed to do. I know that there's talk of like maybe the Canes should consider employing a power play coach. I know that that's kind of a thing around the league now. I don't know which teams or how many teams do it, but this might be a time where maybe you do need to consider outsourcing something to some degree or another just to get something to change, because this has been an issue a lot longer than just now. This has been going on for a while. Daniel says Canes lost one game in 23-24 shootout. Ref screwed us over bad. I remember because I almost lost my mind listening to it. When he doesn't get booted, he loses it. Yeah, he's been getting booted out of the circle a lot lately. I don't know what that is. I mean, he's always kind of gotten waved out a lot, but it seems excessive this season how much he's getting waved out. Grayson Sonic, what's up, dude? That's a really cool logo you came up with there, by the way. It was just not our night, but it's okay. The Canes will get some games like this season, but our 4-game winning streak was nice. Can't wait to find a new winning streak. Yeah, there's going to be games like this. Like I said, I'm not pushing the panic button at large. The power play's got to get fixed, though. Evan says, I was at that game in DC where we lost in shootout. That was a wild game. Yeah, so that one where Aho and I think it was Aho and Milano had hat tricks. I was like ineptly drunk by the time that overtime started. So like I was like, I barely recognized what was going on by the time the shootout started. I'll be honest with you. I normally don't get like that, but I mean, I don't drink a whole lot anymore. And so like when I do drink, I don't have tolerance for it. So now I've just basically stopped entirely. So that Topo Chico you see over there, that's a sparkling water as opposed to a seltzer. But that game was insane. It was absolutely nuts. But let's see. I was at the one last season where they lost in the shootout when Wilton, bodied Jackson Blake into the net. And then there were people behind me that were bitching about Jackson Blake should have got a penalty for goaltender interference. And I'm like, what? Okay. And then they played him earlier that year. And I think that in the 24-25 season, the past season, they lost that game too. I'm pretty sure they lost that one in a shootout. I'm trying to remember because I was there. I'm 99% sure they lost both of those in shootouts, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was overtime. I remember Carolina getting a point in both games, and I'm pretty sure they lost them both in shootouts. J-Dub says Aho and KK are waved out of the circle, brothers. KK doesn't get waved out that much, but it happens a lot to both of them. But Aho, it's like excessive. The panic button should be pushed for the power play alone. Yeah, they've got to do something with the power play. At this point, they need to like really massively shake it up. Like, put some people on there that aren't normally on there. Like, come up with something. Grayson says, thanks for the logo. Like, you're welcome, buddy. No, that's really cool what you came up with there. Yeah, they just weren't themselves tonight. Just all there is to it. Like, there's no other way around it. And I would love to do the thing I've been doing where I like break down the goal videos, but I keep getting copyrighted for it. And I don't mind the copyright claims because that just means I can't make money off the videos, which I'm not monetized yet anyway, because I haven't really been able to, put the time into the channel I want to, because I get the watch time. I just don't have the subscribers. And the funny thing about it is it's like I have literally like 2,000 returning viewers every single time. So if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And instead of it getting claimed, it's getting blocked, and then the stream abruptly stops, and I don't even really get a chance to like do anything about it. I just kind of have to kill the stream like I did the other night. So I think I'll do pre-recorded videos of doing the goal breakdowns, and I've got my little Telegrapher app thing that I'm gonna want to try out anyway. So, I think I might start doing that. I might just pick out a few goals of the week and start breaking them down because I've received a lot of feedback about that, and people are apparently really enjoying it. So I'll try to start doing that more often. As far as doing the show like it's normally done, like the way I normally do Landfall Hour and Damage Report, after the first week of December, roughly, I should be able to start doing that a little bit more often. It's just with my schedule the way it is right now with work and school and everything, it's difficult for me to like really have time to actually put the shows together and then do them the way that I want to. Then I'll start doing ones like that more. I might bring back my old weekly show that I was doing at the beginning of the channel when I first started it. And then that might be when I do like the goal reactions and everything like that. Because like if I pre-record stuff and I upload it and then just play it on StreamYard itself, it doesn't seem to be a problem. Because when I broke down Nikishin's first game, that's how I did it. And I didn't have any issues as far as the stream getting blocked. So I don't know why it's doing that. And there's probably some douchebag that, hates me for no fucking reason, because there's a few of those out there that just come in here and automatically hit report every time I'm streaming and then leave. So, which also makes it difficult to do these things. So, but I don't really care about that. Like, you're a sad and pathetic person if you have time to do shit like that. Will Park says, had a chance to win the game we had no business being if the power play was even halfway good. Yeah, no, you're right. Like, if the power play was not mediocre dog shit, this game could have at least looked somewhat salvageable. Like, if it was just mediocre, it would have been fine. Dylan says, you could clearly tell the guys were tired. You can't make that excuse. I understand that they were tired, but like, being tired is like, there's being tired and then there's looking like you're playing with like no heart whatsoever. And tonight it just looked like there was no effort. Or I don't want to say it was no effort, but it was like, when you get tired and you power through shit. You power through stuff, you play harder, and you just try and play through it, take it shift by shift and get to the end. And they just didn't have any fight in them tonight like they normally do when they play 3 and 4 nights. So Rod's not going to let them make that excuse. So it's a factor, but it doesn't have to be a determining factor. They just didn't play well tonight. It wasn't a factor. It wasn't a fatigue factor. It wasn't an attrition factor, in my opinion. They just weren't good. They're going to have games like that. But, another reason why they need to get the power play sorted out is, like, you notice that the Canes, when they play, when the Canes get penalty kills, it didn't happen tonight, but there's a lot of times where the Canes kill penalties, and it's not just killing a penalty, it's a momentum changer. They'll kill a penalty, and then they'll they'll get that, and they'll grab that momentum, and they'll take a game back over at 5-on-5. Like, it's a continuation of what they do on the penalty kill. They need to get the power play in order, because then that's that much more of an effect that special teams has on them positively. So instead of just having a penalty kill that changes momentum, you get a power play that changes momentum. So there's other ways to go about it. Will Park says, looked like they all went out for drinks last night. Yeah, they just weren't good tonight. J-Dub, I hate having 3 goalies. Yeah, I think that's going to get sorted out soon, because Slavin's going to be coming back hopefully soon. I mean, I don't want them to rush him. Like I said, I'd rather go into wild card 2 with Jacob Slavin healthy than go in, get the President's Trophy, and not have him for the playoffs. Will says, imagine this team with Zilla, Rance, Jennings duo winner. Yeah, something does need to change in the goaltending department. I just hope Freddie's okay and staying healthy, because when he's been healthy, he's been playing fine. He could be a little bit better, but he's not terrible by any means, because let's not forget, Colorado would have destroyed Carolina if it wasn't for Freddie a couple of weeks ago. They would have absolutely destroyed them. So, like, if it's not for Freddie, Carolina doesn't walk out of that game with 1 point, let alone 2. Like, Dylan says, every time team will have horrible games, we ain't immune from. Yeah, nope, nobody's immune from. Like I said, at large, I'm not hitting the panic button, but they just weren't good tonight. That just, even if they were rested, even if they had a fully healthy roster, tonight was one of those nights where they just didn't have it. DMD, what's up? Tonight's game was one where I wanted my money back. They can lose. I don't feel that way, but tonight there was they weren't, so refund. I don't know what U0026 means. I'm sorry, and I don't know why it's coming across that way. That actually kind of looks like one of those weird like coding errors or something. I'm learning about network fundamentals because I'm going into tech. So like I see stuff a little bit differently now. People on X already screaming it's time to move on from Freddie because of the injury. LOL, he got blasted by Bazooka, and they'd still say he's weak. Okay, for those of you who think that the Hurricanes should move on from Freddie, what is your solution? So I can go ahead and tell you why it won't work. Because, okay, who are you going to trade for? And what are you willing to give up to get them? Above all, who is willing to give up a goalie right now? Nobody. Not to mention trading for a goalie, especially if you do it really close to the deadline, is a very, very risky move because they take the closer you play to your own net, the more time it takes you to acclimate to what's going on in front of you. That's why goalies take the longest to develop and acclimate to new teams. Defensemen take longer than defensemen take a little bit less time than goalies, but they also take longer than forwards. This team is in a good position to add a forward before the deadline. But what are you supposed to do in that situation? How do you add a goalie? You're not adding anything other than maybe a backup. Maybe you can pry Saros out of Nashville. Maybe, but you can't do that yet. They're not going to give him up yet. And if you do, you have to make sure you give Saros enough time to acclimate to the team in front of him because he's been playing with the same team his entire career with Nashville. So let's say you can make that trade. What are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up Nadeau for a goalie? Because that's the starting price you're looking at to make something like that happen. DMD says, sort money back. It was in dollar cents. Oh, okay. Stahl literally trucked him. How can you blame? Yeah, that wasn't on Freddie. Like, there's nothing to do about that. And not to mention, he tried to stay in the game. It looked like, and it might have been, like I said, it was either the concussion spotter, which I think is more likely, or the coaching staff made the decision to go ahead and pull him out. And you weren't winning that game anyway. So no point in risking him getting hurt. The 0026 was Unicode ampersand, by the way. Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew it was something like that because when I saw that, I'm like, that looks like a code. Will Park says goalies ain't what they used to be, man. The numbers don't lie, and it's been on the decline. Yeah, it'll never get back to like, I don't think the NHL will ever get back to like the amount of scoring that it had in like the 80s because goalies are too good now. But the scoring is definitely going up, and it's going to hit a point where it's probably the second highest scoring era of the game when compared to the 80s. So they'll never be that hung out to dry again. But goalies are heavily regulated now. Their gear is very regulated of what you can and can't get away with in terms of the size of your pads and all that type of stuff. So, you know, a lot has been taken away from them and their ability to do their job as it is. And I hope they don't change anything else about that. But, you know, just simple fact of the matter, like going out and getting a goalie is not as simple as people make it out to be. It's really not. I think a lot of people play NHL 26 and they think that they can just set the slider on the trade difficulty down to like 0 and just go out and get Connor Hellebuck or Igor Shesterkin or Andre Vasilevsky and put them in a Kane sweater for 2 7th rounders and Felix Unger-Storm. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic. So would I like to see something done about the goaltending situation? Yes. Is Saros maybe a possibility? Sure. But you're talking about giving some stuff up if you're going to make that happen. And that's a trade. If you are going to make it, the sooner, the better. So yeah, the goaltending thing's an issue. But Freddie also was in the 22-23 season. Freddie was absolutely lights out, and he got beat only because of Sergei Bobrovsky going into a just absolute God mode in the playoffs against him. And then he was great last year. Just team in front of him let him down at times too. But they're saying to move on from him, but it's like, okay, all right, you've identified you want to move on from Freddie. How do you replace him? That doesn't solve a problem. That makes a worse one. I say the same things when people were saying, get rid of Svechnikov, get rid of KK. It is not that simple. Daniel says Rod confirmed concussion spotter did make that decision. I figured since he was still on the ice for a little bit. Ethan, what's up, buddy? RBA confirmed that the concussion spotter pulled him Freddie off. So this team the chance to secede until they find a real 1A. Look at the Oilers. We could be a lot worse. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, you know, we were talking about this a couple of years ago on Caniacs, or not a couple of years. Well, yeah, it's been a couple of years now. We were talking about it on Caniac sessions one day. I remember this conversation vividly between me, AB, and Griff. If people were talking about what are you going to do about the goaltending situation, are you still going to have Freddie and Kochekov, and everyone wanted something different? Not everyone, but you know what I mean. And we were sitting there like, we're probably having the same tandem back next year. There's not really anybody out there. If you think it's bad now, wait until the NHL expands to 34 teams in the next 8 years and then 36 by 2035 or something. It's coming. I don't agree with it, but it is coming. Evans, like, I got worried when Jordo tackled Freddie. Well, what was Stahl doing there anyway? He wasn't going for a play or a puck. I think he was just trying to get in front of the net and get to where the puck was, and he accidentally ran Freddie over in the process, and Freddie was a little bit out of his crease. That just, it happens fast. It was just one of those accidental messed up situations. Playing NHL 26 as a GM versus NHL in real life as a GM, two very different things. One you're doing in a game as an easy way to move one in real life, which takes time to adjust and have to figure out how to help a team. Yeah. Will Park says he was watching play and just didn't see Zilla. Yeah. But, you know, it's like, I talked about it on one stream one day in regards to the goaltending thing, because this is a good discussion to have. I talked about when you're looking at other realistic targets, like you don't need Patrick Waugh or Marty Turco back there for the Canes. Would that be great? Sure. Is it realistic? No. So one of the guys I looked at was Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen out of Buffalo. Maybe you can make something happen there if Buffalo sells. I don't think that they're going to yet because, you know, the fans are ready to burn KeyBank Center down. So I think that that's a discussion you have to put off there for a little while. But right now, the only somewhat realistic target that would be a definitive upgrade is UC Saros. And even then, you're not getting a long-term upgrade there. So not a super long-term. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let me look at something on Puckpedia real quick, because I know he's signed within the last couple of years. Oh, Jesus Christ. He's... Whew. Okay, here's the double-edged sword benefit and drawback here with Saros. He's at a $7.74 million cap hit. No problem there. Carolina has the cap space to acquire someone like him. He's in the first year of an 8-year contract that would take him to 2033 at age 38. So how many good years are you going to get out of him at that point? Because he's already 30. You'll get 3, maybe 4, something like that. Maybe you get lucky and get a little bit longer. But then you would have to look at, okay, well, eventually what's Carolina going to do with that contract? Are they going to get somebody else and move him into the backup role? Like, you have to think very, very long term if you're going to acquire a guy who's under an 8-year contract and it wouldn't expire until he turns 38, especially when you're talking about a goalie. Yeah, that contract's a bit of a turnoff to me. If it was a little bit short, even if it was 5, 6 years, something like that, I'd be like, yeah, go ahead, pull the trigger, get that done if you can. But that's just, that contract's a little scary. Will Park says he was watching play and just didn't see Zilla. Yeah, in regards to Jordo, yeah, he was trying to do the right thing and just didn't go well. I would ride with Freddie for the Canes. Honestly, there's not much in the market goalie wise. There's really not. You got a better chance of getting a center and a winger. And if you actually need it, which you won't, a defenseman, yeah, that contract isn't great. Hell nah. How did he get away with that contract? This is the organization that paid Brady Shea $49 million. And Carolina brought Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker in for less and less term. You literally got 2 players for the price of 1 by letting Brady Shea walk. Unpopular opinion against some of my constituents, if you'll call them that. I'd rather have kept Pesce than Shea if they had to keep either one of them, but I'm glad they let them both go. If they hadn't let them both go, you would have turned the blue line into a retirement home about 3 or 4 seasons. and you wouldn't have any different results in the last playoffs. Evan says, I don't think Nashville wants to give him up either. Yeah, they're going to have to live with that mistake even if they do want to give him up. Let's see. Does he have any sort of trade protection anyway? Full no movement clause. So if Carolina did manage to get him, or if they did waive, if he did waive his no movement clause and come in, then if you decide you wanted to move him again, then Carolina would have to get him to waive it. And yeah, that's a lot of risk and high risk, potentially high reward, but I don't know, man. If it was shorter, if it was 5 or 6 years even, I would maybe consider going for that. But let me see what I want to see what UPL's is, because I know his numbers aren't outstanding, but he doesn't have a very good team in front of him. So UPL's got a $4.75 million cap hit. 2029, he'd be a UFA at the age of 30. So, like, a contract like that is something I would want Carolina to look at a little bit harder. Someone like that. Let's see. Let's see what his numbers look like again. Puckpedia is being uncooperative tonight. Let's see. Why is this website doing this? What the hell? Why is it showing a damn Pandora ad? Just let me look at my damn... Okay. So, 5-team. So UPL has a 5-team no-trade list in 26-27 up until his UFA year. I mean, let's see. Where's his... look at his numbers on Money Puck. Goals against 9, expected goals against 6.74. I don't know about that. I remember these looking better the last time I looked at them. Awesome. What's up, dude? Barry Trotz is why you got that contract. Yeah, Barry Trotz, he was a great coach. I don't know about him as a GM. Same thing. Ron Francis was a great player. Don't know about him as a GM. I definitely don't like him as a Hockey Hall of Fame committee member. Do you think Freddie extends next year, or does the front office attempt to change up the tandem? As it stands right now, looking at this stagnant market, I think he's coming back. Unless they pull a rabbit out of their hat of some sort, or someone in the system really takes a very sharp upward turn, I don't see it happening. Grayson says, I'll be honest, warning take. This Canes team is way better than last year with Orlov and Burns. Yeah, this team is great. That's why I'm not really panicking about it. I know that there's some things they got to get sorted out. No, this team is outstanding. Like, this is potentially the best roster that the Canes have ever put together. I'm a firm believer the 22-23 roster was the best one they've ever had, Cup team included. If I had to take a guess of what the next one after that would be, I would say the 09 team was really good. Yeah, so I'd say 22-23, 06, 09 were the three best that have had a full season to prove that. And then this one, by the time it's all said and done, will be the best team that Carolina's had yet, because I don't think they're done with adding. I just don't know what they're going to do about about the goaltending situation. There might not be anything you can do about it, just to be perfectly honest. Trying to think of who else maybe there could be to look at for goalies. They won't give him up. They won't give him up. They won't give him up. Don't want him. 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 Nope. Not moving. Not moving. Not moving. Not moving. Caden Primo's back in the system anyway. And then Linus Ullmark is dead last, ranked 73rd among goaltenders in the NHL. Spencer Knight is at the top. Wow. Fully expect us to play better against Vancouver on Friday. Yeah. Yeah, they'll be fine. They were due for a game like this. They'll be fine. But I swear to Christ, the power play has to get sorted out. Daniel says, what did you think of the 23-24 team once they added Gensel and Kuznetsov? See, here's the thing about that team. I was excited about it, but at the same time, considering the disappointment that I had just faced 12 months prior to that, it was hard for me to really get excited about that team. Reason being is because I remember I hadn't been to a game in about 2-3 years at that point, because that's around the time that the last game I went to before that, I remember exactly. I went to the New Year's Eve game where Carolina played against Montreal 2019 going into 2020. And then the virus that totally didn't come from a lab in China showed up and everyone lost their minds. So the entire time that they were doing the limited crowds and the mask wearing stuff, I just decided I didn't want to go. I didn't want to deal with that because I didn't feel like hearing some Redditor start yelling at me over not wearing a mask. So I just wasn't going to do it. That was the policy that was implemented by the organization and the league and whatever the state was doing at the time. So I just decided, I'm like, you know what? When this stuff stops, I'll go back. If it never stops, I'll just never go back. So 22-23 season rolled around. I hadn't been to a game in 2 years. And it's actually cool I got to go to that game because unfortunately that was, we lost Johnny Gaudreau not long after that. And I remember when that team came on the ice, they were wearing the 25th anniversary sweaters. I've got a video that's actually posted on the channel. It might be the very first one I ever posted, where, they came out of the tunnel. I was down there watching warm-ups and everything like that. And I remember I texted my dad and I was like, this team is special. Like, I just had this good vibe about it. Like, I felt like, all right, this one's, they're going to get it done. And I went to 1 or 2 games after that. And then the third one I went to, or the fourth one I went to in the regular season that year, was when Svechnikov tore his ACL. I walked into that building with a bad feeling. I was like, I didn't know what this was before I started the channel and everything, or it was around the time I started the channel. I walked in that building with a bad feeling, and I was like, yeah, they're probably going to lose. But that was the extent of it. And then I saw Svechnikov pitch forward in a weird way. He came down the tunnel. He came back out for a little bit. Then he went back in. I was like, all right, whatever that is, that's bad. And Carolina ended up losing that game 4-0. That game was not too dissimilar from the one tonight where they just had no jump, no heart. They just weren't playing well. And they were clearly getting frustrated with things, and nobody could get going. So... And then the next morning, the whole thing about Svechnikov came out and everything like that. And then I didn't go to another game. Let's see, because I went to the Stadium Series game that year too. I didn't go to another game until Game 5 against the Devils in the playoffs. And that was the 2 best hockey games I've ever been to as far as the NHL goes, because I've been to a lot of minor league games that are often awesome. The best 2 NHL games that I ever went to were the Stadium Series game and Game 5, where they beat the Devils in 23. And I thought for sure that team had it. The vibes were something else then. A lot of people thought that Carolina was going to walk in there and just walk all over the Panthers. I never thought that. I was expecting 7. I really was. And then you got an even weirder result than that because Carolina played better than Florida 85% of that series and lost 4 games by 1 goal. Like, that was just, that whole series was weird. And I was absolutely like just antagonized and pissed by game 3. When Kotkaniemi walked down the tunnel after game 3 and was destroying his stick, I was kind of like that just kind of summarized how I felt about it. So it was hard for me to get excited about the 23-24 team. When they added Gensel, I was like, great. And then when they added Kuznetsov, I was kind of like, wasn't expecting that, but great. Something about that team never sold. I never was sold on it. I was hopeful about them, but just I felt like something's not here. And I didn't know what it was. But for some odd reason, I just couldn't get excited about that team. I was hopeful that they were going to do something. I knew that they were good on paper. But I also just 23-24, I was just kind of like, I don't know if this team's going to get it done. I just didn't feel like that they were going to, and ultimately they didn't. And then the only playoff game that I've been in attendance for that the Canes lost was game 6 against the Rangers in 2024. And I remember that explicitly, that I went up to the bathroom at the second intermission. And I was sitting by the pillar I'm trying to remember what section it was. I was standing over there, and me and this Rangers fan are just BSing about stuff. There was someone who started talking shit to him in the bathroom because he was drunk, and, it was completely uncalled for. The guy was really cool. And, him and I get to talking and everything like that. And I'm standing up there for a couple more minutes. I grab some barbecue nachos, and I grab a drink, and I go back to my seat. I'm sitting there with AB, and I'm just kind of like, I just feel like something bad is going to happen. And then, of course, we know it did. The 22-23 team, I didn't have that feeling at all until literally game 3 when Florida scored the only goal in that game. That was the only time I was kind of like, all right, this team's not going to do it. All the way through that season, I felt like Carolina was going to win the Cup. Won 6 games without Aho, 7 games without Slavin, something along those lines. And there were some overlaps there too. There were a few games that they won without Aho and without Slavin in the lineup at the same time. I was like, this team's got it. It's got the perfect mix. It's fast. It's got the perfect mix of youth and experience. The defense is great. Freddie was playing well. Like, you've got all this energy from the Stadium Series game. You know that you can win even if you don't have Svechnikov, Kasha, and Pacioretty. And it just never... I felt good about that season up until game 3. So that's why when the 23-24 team came around, even after the trade deadline, I was kind of like, I just couldn't get excited about it. This team I'm more excited about than the 23-24 team, and I mean that long term. The best is yet to come with this organization. The fact they won a game in the conference finals last season is actually huge for this organization in terms of continuing to attract free agents. And the other thing is, we have to consider when you draft players, a lot of times if they decide they don't want to play, if they're NCAA, they might use the college loophole to get out of here. Like, Adam Fox kind of did that because he basically said, yeah, I'm not signing with you guys, so they traded him. Then you have a case like Jimmy Vesey. He did not sign with the team that originally drafted him because he wanted to go to the Rangers. So you want to create an environment where guys are compelled to stay when they have that option, or even if you draft them and they go through juniors and you have a little bit more ownership over them, they can still say, well, I just don't want to play here until they get traded. So you want to make it more attractive in that regard. Carolina's done a great job of that. It's like, this actually reminds me of something I want to talk about. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine at work the other day, who's a big Canes fan as well. I remember at one point in time, about the only place the Canes were remotely more. This is the Red Volution days, mind you, which whoever came up with that slogan, I don't ever approach me, Red Volution person, whoever you are. If you watch the show, thank you for your support. Get the fuck out. Anyway. I'm sorry. I get infuriated even thinking about that stupid marketing. But the Canes were basically marketed in the triangle and the triangle only, and the marketing was awful. That was one of the best things Dundon did upon his purchasing of the majority ownership of the team, was turning the branding. Or that's part of the reason why I have the name I have for the channel, because I love the whole "Take Warning" slogan so much. I was like, you know what, that like, it's like Redvolution. It's kind of like like you're asking to get made fun of. But then "Take Warning" is a little bit more like, okay, it's a storm-centered type of slogan. It's meant to be intimidating. It's, it fits a lot more. It's signaling, hey, we have this change of direction. You have Justin Williams. You have a real captain now. You have a real coach now with Rod Brindamore. You have a real slogan. You have an owner who actually spends to the cap and wants to win. You have all those things. Now, are you going to win? And then the team starts turning it around. You get lucky and you get a second round or second overall pick with Svechnikov, who has he developed in what you hope a second overall pick does long term? Not yet. Is the potential still there? If he continues to reinvent his game as well as he has been doing, absolutely. But nowadays, the team is actually marketed pretty well over the entire state. A friend of mine told me that there are billboards out in Western North Carolina advertising the Canes more now than there have ever been. The social media reach, even though I hate the person who runs it. And you guys saw with what I posted on X, what I think of a lot of hockey social media people, that I ratioed the Nashville Predators. I literally ratioed an NHL team. I did not expect that to happen with that post, but I digress. There's going to be a little bit of a video essay about that at some point. The marketing is 10 times better. The fan engagement is 10 times better. And what a lot of people don't realize about the drought itself, people didn't stop going to games because the team sucked. People stopped going to games because they didn't think that it was going to get any better. The first game that Connor Bedard played in the United Center, place was packed. Standing room only. San Jose's attendance is not amazing, but it's still pretty good because people want to go see Macklin Celebrini. They want to go see Will Smith. If you give people a reason to go to the games, if you say this product may not be winning right now, but look at this exciting young talent that we have, they're going to want to watch that. They're going to want to be like, I was there when, I was there actually when Svechnikov scored his first goal. It's like if you give people some sort of hope, then they'll go to games still. And if you market it well enough, they'll go to games still. But we had been hearing for year over year over year, oh, the Hurricanes are drafting well. The future is bright. The future's still bright. Just, don't adjust your set. The future is bright. The future is bright. The future is bright. Next thing you know, 9 years later, don't worry, guys, the future is still bright. And then it actually did become bright when Dundon bought the team. And, we had a real coach, real captain, all that type of stuff, and recovering from the BP era. So they've done better with the marketing. People actually want to go to games. And there will be a time where this team has to do a retool or a rebuild or something like that. That day will come. But it's not any time in the foreseeable future because they've done such a good job with those types of things that you get a guy like Nikolai Ehlers wanting to come play in Carolina. Jake Gensel wanted to stay, and honestly, the front office just fucked it up. The fact that Waddell hit the eject button when he didn't help. And Tulski got handed a dumpster fire, and he's done a pretty good job. You had some cap issues there because that was before Kuznetsov decided to, get his contract terminated and go back to the K. But around that time frame, there was nothing really to be excited about. Zach Boychuk didn't work out. Valentin Zykov didn't work out. And then you had a bunch of prospects that, people like me and people like a lot of you in the comments, I would imagine most of you, were really, really, really watching them. You were wondering how David Cotton was doing, how Jacob Slavin was doing, who did pan out, how Brett Pesce was doing, who did pan out. Let's see, Alexei Sorella back then, he didn't really turn in anything, but, just for an example, it's like no one ever really saw the team getting any better. It's not that people didn't care. And some people, myself included, already kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that, like, the team's going to end up moving. And, there's one conspiracy theory out there that I do think holds some water. And me and my friend Matthew have talked about this on here before. When they realigned the NHL to accommodate bringing Vegas in and the eventual Seattle Kraken, and then there's going to be more teams eventually, and that's going to create a whole nother host of problems until they get back up to go from 34 to 36. There was this conspiracy out there that the Canes were put into the Metropolitan Division on purpose to make them lose more drive the attendance down and eventually force them to have to move, because you had prime Pittsburgh Penguins with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Fleury, so on and so forth. You had prime Washington Capitals with Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, Backstrom, prime Carlson, Holtby, list goes on. The Islanders were still really good then. The Rangers were in and out. The Flyers were making the playoffs every other year. At one point in time, being in the Metropolitan Division was a nightmare for everybody in it, except for the Capitals and the Penguins, essentially. You knew that they were going to play in the second round basically every year. So whether that's true or not, I don't entirely know. If anything ever came out that proved it, it wouldn't surprise me. Will Park says 23-24 team had me fooled. I was a firm believer. Yeah, I tried my best to get in that team. I just couldn't do it. Grayson says, I still think the Hurricanes team can win a Stanley Cup, especially after adding Ehlers and Miller. Sheesh, I can't wait for Slavin to come back and pair him with Miller. I think I wouldn't do the D pairs that way. I want to keep Miller and Chatfield together because they've looked like they've got some really good chemistry together. Call me crazy for this, and I'm sure some will. If I were to do anything, if you didn't go back to having Slavin with Walker, I would do Slavin and Ghost. Because you remember how good Slavin and D'Angelo played together. In this case, you put Gostisbehere on the right, Slavin on the left, and you'd have a very similar dynamic that's a little bit better defensively. So I would do that. Nikishin and Walker and Chatfield and Miller. That's what I would do personally, because Ghost has shown he can be really effective on the right side of the ice and produce some offense, and he would be able to open that side of his game up even more with Slavin. That's what I would do. We'll see what happens when Slavin comes back, and he doesn't need to rush. If he can take as much time as he needs, because I would like to add Jacob Slavin to the very, very, very short list of players who won a gold medal and a Stanley Cup in the same season. That would be amazing. And if that means he has to miss the majority of the regular season to happen, so be it. Evan Smith says, I love the Blake, Stankoven, Ehlers line. It's by far my favorite. I've really enjoyed that line, and that was the only one that was halfway worth watching tonight. Haggerty, welcome to the show again. Literally ran into Trip Tracy tonight. What a cool guy. Yeah, I would love to meet Trip. Daniel Presley says to Will Parks, I agree. I was new to the Canes hockey, but I really thought that team would get it done. Yeah, that I tried to get into that team. I just couldn't. Got Shesterkin. Yeah, and Shesterkin didn't even play totally lights out like Bobrovsky did the season before that. He made timely saves when they needed to be saved. And in that game 6, unfortunately, that was when Freddie needed to make literally 2 timely saves, and you've got a game 7 in MSG that I would have considered going to, but we already had plans that weekend. That weekend we went to running of the Chihuahuas in DC, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little Chihuahua race. So we take our Chihuahua there and he races with other Chihuahuas. He sucks at it because he's fast, but he couldn't understand the concept of once I let him go, run that way. So, it's like they'll do the thing. They'll be like 3, 2, 1, go. I'll be holding the Chihuahua up here and I'll be like, all right, go Butters. And he's turn around and look at me like, what? And Desiree, my girlfriend's over there at the other end, Butters. And then he figures out, I was like, okay. But yeah, Butters sucks at restarts. Will Parks, yep, he bailed the Rangers out and we just couldn't finish. Yeah, that series was heartbreaking. See, I'd already kind of given up on that one too. I was hoping they could get it done, but at the same time, if you go back and look, there's a video titled on this channel, I believe it's called I'll See You Thursday, where me and my friend Sam Driscoll, a very good friend of mine, were talking about me coming down for that game if Carolina managed to get it back to 6. And that's what they did. I knew they weren't cooked. I was just cautiously optimistic after game 4 and 5. Daniel says that 23 playoff run was what got me into hockey and made me become a Canes fan. After the sweep, that's where my beef with the Panthers started. Oh, we've all got beef with them since then. Will Park says the vibes in game 6 versus Rags in the third period were sky high in that barn. Yeah, I didn't feel it at that point. I felt fucking terrified, and AB will verify that because I went back to the seats and we just kind of looked at each other like, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah," but I want this game to end very, very quickly, and I want it to be not very exciting, and that's not what I got. Haggerty says you need a meet and greet next game you come to. I want to be the first to sign up. I will do something like that eventually. I'm figuring out what place I want to do that. We discussed maybe having one at Flying Saucer because that's one of my favorite places to go. When I do that, that information will be out there and everything like that. That will definitely get done. Evan Smith says Florida won the psychological battle that night in 5 OT, and the series was over after that. Yeah, dude, when Jarvis hit the post, and I think it was the fourth overtime, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, this team's played so well tonight. Can we get rewarded, please? And then there was also like one overturned goal on each side. I remember that WRAL showed the parking lot and everyone was so hyped up. I really thought we would force game 7 against the Rangers. Yeah, I was fine until the second intermission. Second intermission, I was just kind of like, oh, shit. Haggerty says my $300 Nikishin jersey already has some spots from $30 nachos. Yeah, that's why I try to like take the sweater off while I'm eating. And plus the Nikishin one I'm getting the previous away one with his name on it when I do get one, because that was what he wore in his first game. And I don't really like the new away ones. And the only away sweater I have as far as recent history, I have my Made in Canada Pro Stock one that I had Aho's name put on, and that doesn't leave my closet. The only time that will leave my closet 2 times, once to get it signed, and then a second time to get it framed. I will never wear that one. Like, it's never getting worn. Got to get 2 jerseys, one for games, one to keep nice. Yeah, and I've got a lot more than 2. I've got, Jesus. If I count all my Canes, Fire Ants, Marksman, Fayetteville Force, I've got a couple from the Checkers, and then all the ones I've worn when I've played, I've got a fucking lot. Like, one day I'm going to, like, I might do a giveaway for some of my like beer league sweaters to like some of my favorite subscribers and put like a little thank you note in them or something like that. But I'm not big enough to do that just yet. Grayson says, do you think the Canes team is good enough to beat Florida with everyone healthy versus a healthy Florida team this time of year if they met again in a postseason game? Gun to my head, yes. I think they could get it done. Fully healthy, I think they could get it done. It would be tough. It would be the most difficult series that this team has ever played, but it could be done. But yeah, gun to my head, yes. That would be the most aggravating fucking 7 games that we'll ever watch. But yeah, they could get it done. Power play merchant, I just feel like we were one of those teams that needs a guy who shows up on the man advantage. I know that sounds obvious, but a play like Stamkos or Line A could change things up. Everyone wants to pass, give them something to pass to. Luckily, there is someone in the organization that I think is going to be that guy, and that's going to be Nadeau. But that doesn't help the Canes right now, as you're pointing out. That is true. I don't know what the solution is there. It's like Ryan O'Reilly's been talked about. He'd be a stopgap solution to second line center, but he's also a little bit more of what you already have. Not saying that that's a bad area to be redundant in, but you're absolutely right that there needs to be someone with some lethality on the power play. And Carolina doesn't have that definitive lethal power play asset right now. Once they have that might help turn it around, but there are some things as far as how they execute it that I think needs to change, because the power play looks like they tend to lean heavily on the umbrella type of setup. Might want to try something a little bit different. And, God, put Nikishin back on it. Let him drop bombs from the top of the circle. If you want to have him out there with another defenseman, that's fine. Put him out there with Walker. Well, like I was saying, just at this point, roll the 5-on-5 lines out for the power play for a little bit right now, just to see if you can, throw your conventional 5-on-5 lines out there and see if you get a power play goal and see if that turns everything around, because they're out of options. And, one thing Taylor Hall last season talked about was, he said part of the reason he thought the power play was struggling was because they were constantly practicing against the best penalty kill in the league. That makes total sense. If you can't get it done at practice, it's hard to get it done in a game. So maybe what they can do is they can get some of the junior Canes to go out there and play against the power play during morning skate and during practice, and maybe that will remind them how to do it. And if the junior Canes are too good, I'll get some of my buddies and we'll go out there. Evan says Nikishin's shot is too good for him not to be out there. I agree. Even if you got to put him out there with Walker to have another defenseman with him or something, put him back out there. He's going to be a top pair defenseman that plays a ton of minutes. Now, Carolina essentially has 2 top pairs and a really good second pair as far as structuring their whole entire defense. But as far as what utilization and role Nikishin is going to play, he's essentially morphing into a top pair guy in front of our very eyes, an all situations guy at that. Have him do it. Put him back out there. It really will not hurt at this point. Gostisbehere fumbled the fuck out of the puck a couple of times on the power play tonight. I know he just got back. Takes a little bit to get spun up, and everyone knows I'm a big Ghost fan. But he couldn't walk the blue line tonight to save his life. All right, I'll do a couple more, then I'm going to get out of here. Grayson says, I could see it. 24-25, Kane's going to maybe had a chance if Chatfield and Walker were healthy. Maybe game 3 doesn't go down the drain. We save game 5, maybe a 3-2 series lead. And maybe if Morrow wasn't in the freaking lineup. I'm sorry. I'm always going to kind of be mad at Rod for that. Ethan says, your call on Nikishin is valid. He's earned everything and more. What are your thoughts on the call for a specific power play coach? I hear it all the time, but never really understand how the process would even start. That's why I don't say much about it, because I know that it's a thing around the league. And I know that there's some teams that do it, but I don't know which ones do and which ones don't. And I don't know how it works as far as like, what do you do during practice? Does Rod do the normal line rushes with guys and normal practice stuff and drills with guys, and then they go and they work with the power play coach, and then Tim Gleason is over there with them to run the penalty killers that are there? Maybe you could. I will address that. I saw that. Maybe that's how it works. As far as how practice is structured when you have a power play coach, I don't know. Maybe it works sort of like what goaltending coaches do, because a really cool show, NHL Road to the Winter Classic, I remember watching a few years ago, and it showed how the goaltending coach would do separate drills with the goalies. And one of the things that they were doing with the Caps, it was actually, I believe it was Artur Zerbe that was working with Braden Holtby, because he was the goaltending coach for the Caps. And I actually worked with somebody who got set up to go on a blind date with him. It was a really funny story that she told me about. But he had him holding I want to say it was a medicine ball or a basketball or something like that. He had him holding that, or Urbe had Holtby holding that, and him doing lateral butterfly motions with it. And they were completely separate of everybody else. Maybe that's how they would do it with a power play coach. I don't know the ins and outs of it. It's something that I would have to do research on personally to kind of figure out. I could definitely see it working that way. That's something I actually really, hold up. Let me write that down on my list of stuff to do for the YouTube channel. Let's see here. Research power play coach dynamics. I will look into that, because that's something that it would kind of deserve its own stream just to talk about it in the grand scheme of the game, because I don't really know how it works. And, I'm not going to be, to quote my favorite movie, I'm not going to sit here and blow sunshine up your ass, Lieutenant. If I don't know, I don't know. I will do research on I will tell you that I don't know something, and I'd rather admit that and go do research on it and figure it out, rather than try and come up with some bullshit answer, because I really don't know. If I don't know, I say that I don't know. Like, there's a lot of times where a player draws in the lineup for, whatever team Carolina's playing against. I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, if I don't know, I don't know. Evan Smith says, you and your buddies are going to block a Nikishin shot. That's the idea. I won't get in the way. And then they'll remember how to do those things. They'll remember how to score. They'll remember how to pass the puck around people that aren't effective penalty killers. That's the idea, Evan. I will get out of the way. Yes, Will, that's the idea. I will gladly get out of the way. I will just roll the red carpet out, and I will step to the left or right and just let him shoot that puck. That's the idea. Grayson says, I hate to say it, but Scott Morrow was useless to us in the Eastern Conference Finals last year against Florida. Meanwhile, he has no playoff experience. Yeah, I've made my thoughts on Morrow abundantly clear. And like I said, I know it was kind of weird that I just kind of flipped my opinion on him out of nowhere, but I have my reasons for that. Those games were just those games. I was just like, yeah, I'm out on him. After that, I remember I posted something that night after that game. I said, I'm not entirely sure Scott Morrow should be a Hurricane next season. And they have a history of trading players with that skill set. Bean, Bear, they let Hamilton walk. I didn't see him being a Kane. If he wasn't going to develop into the guy to the right of Jacob Slavin and be at least a 50-point player, there was no need to keep him. Meanwhile, you brought in a season or a definitive NHL player in Keandre Miller. He has his faults, but you knew you were at least getting an NHL player back, and you knew that you were getting at least a good middle pair guy. At the high end, he's maybe a top end, and then maybe later in his contract, he plays third pair. But you got a guy who you got an all situations defenseman for a two situations defenseman, because Morrow's not going to kill penalties. As far as I know, he didn't even do it in the A, but you get an all situations defenseman with size, with reach, who skates well, in exchange for a mostly purely offensive defenseman whose ceiling is kind of hard to figure out. Daniel says that Saturday Game 7 ECF against the Florida Panthers at Lenovo would have my stomach in knots the entire game, especially if it went to OT. I'd fast for 2 days before that game, and I would drink nothing but water just to reduce the nausea that I would feel during that. Stephen Newman, what's up, buddy? I hope you had fun tonight despite the stuff that went on there at the game tonight, and Jarvis was the most invisible I've ever seen him. Miller was like really, really bad, and while the rest just looked tired and slow. I hope it's a fluke, but I don't know. Some nights it looks like they just don't have enough juice. Yeah, they just weren't good tonight. They'll be fine. They'll get over it. They'll get past it. It's just they were due for a game like this. I just wish it had not been so lackluster. All right, everybody. So I am going to get off of here and do some homework. I'm going to get some sleep. And then I am finally going to play NASCAR 25 tomorrow because it's out for PC and I haven't bought it yet. But I'm about to do that. And I want to get all my schoolwork done so I can actually spend a day playing NASCAR 25. I might stream it, not on YouTube, but probably on X, because YouTube's algorithm is weird about streaming stuff that's unrelated to your normal content. So I'm probably not going to do it here. I do have a sim racing channel called Trackstorm Racing. If you want to subscribe to that, I've got a few of my iRacing videos up there. If you want to check that out, I'm going to be like doing a review of the game and, recording some gameplay, and I'll do some paint boost stuff. I'm gonna make a warning tape car at some point. I'll do that live, maybe. Like I'll do some stuff over there too. Also, Adversary Air. If you're into military aviation, I want to start posting more stuff on that channel as I get time to and everything like that. My next thing I'm going to start doing over there, me and my girlfriend just got Magellan TV, and I bookmarked a bunch of aviation documentaries. So I'm going to do like 10-minute documentary reviews, other stuff like that. So everyone, it has been fun. Thank you again for all your support, and I will see you again soon.